All right. And we have audio. And that also may be a little loud on the gain. Let me knock that down just a little bit. There we are. Apologies for the technical issues. Yeah. It would not be in time if you could hear me coming out of the gate. Well, there's a lot of interesting news today. I'm tempted to really. I think there's probably only one thing at this point worth saying. Rapper Kanye West has announced his candidacy for President of the United States in 2020. He is announcing it a little late to get on the ballot. He can't get on the ballot in at least 30 states, 25 states, but he will be trying to get on the ballot on all the others. He can also still get go in as a write-in for the other 25. So Kanye West has announced his candidacy for president of the United States. I'm calling it, folks. I think that's about the end of the show. We had some COVID numbers and other things that we were going to cover, but really, I think if Kanye, I think if Kanye is running, that's it. I think civilization is done. I'm calling it. I I don't know. Oh, last night there was what appeared to be a rocket attack on a U.S. embassy inside the Iraqi Green Zone. What we have is some footage of uh, that attack. This here is a right at the point of when they were just announcing there was a air raid siren and the attack was beginning. And we have here what appears to be a shoot down by the CRAM defenses of an incoming attack onto the U.S. Embassy at the Green Zone. It appears like no damage was done to any of the military buildings. There was damage to at least one civilian building, which you can see here. Now this video is not playing, so let me see if I can get this to play. There we are. And I think we didn't see the. All right, and then this was because I don't think this one played. I apologize. Let's get this over here. That is the shoot down of one of the incoming rockets by CRAM Air Defense. All right. Sorry, apologies. Okay, there we go. Now, this is the missile system that we believe was used. Pieces of a volcano 76, 62 millimeter round was found right outside a home where it fell. It looks like the rocket was intended to hit the green zone, was shot down, and then there was shrapnel that landed, and there were civilian casualties. We're going to keep an eye on it. I'm not overly worried. It's not reported very often. The green zone actually does get hit reasonably frequently. So we'll keep an eye on it and see if it's anything. There are a number of Iranian militias that, well, they're not officially Iranian, but they're Iranian-backed militias that end up going in and just shooting off a rocket or two. Since they're not officially state-sponsored, there's very little we can do. And Nate Brody is here. Thank you very much for coming, Nate. It's good to see you as always. Ryrez, Atheist Swede, who's a supporter, so thank you all. Dr. Zayas, Michael Westby. We have a lot of people here. Maybe we should change to morning broadcast. It's a little early for me, but we weren't able to do our yesterday's broadcast. Anyways, we'll be keeping an eye on that, but thank you all very much for coming. Brazil has now surpassed 1.5 million coronavirus cases. Northeastern Spain has ordered a lockdown in light of the resurgence of COVID outbreaks. Australia has also ordered a hard lockdown of public housing in Melbourne. India has reported a record 22,000 cases in the last 24 hours. You can see on this chart here, and let me full screen that chart for 1 second. Oh, that's the wrong. On that chart there, you can see we are quickly catching up with Brazil, who is the world leader in COVID cases. There is nothing that looks like shows any indication of stopping that increase. Now, we have shown also earlier this chart, which is very concerning. This is an example of long-term predictions. We are now slightly past that point, but there's a blue line going down the middle there. That blue line is where we are today. That's a vertical line, not the horizontal axis. You can see we are just starting that red zone. And the concern here is this. As you get an increase in actual cases, the amount of hospital bed use is actually, it's still proportionate, but the ratio increases. You end up needing a significantly greater amount of hospital beds with just a smaller increase in the COVID rates. And so what you can see there, the red is the anticipated need of hospital beds, and the red is the anticipated spike in COVID cases anticipated. Well, that has it in, I believe, October, but it's still a little hard to predict. But you can see at this point in Texas, in two counties in Texas, they are at capacity and they are moving people to other counties. We're going to discuss that in a second, but we're at capacity and we barely started on that access, so it's a little concerning. Florida has set a new record of 11,500 new COVID cases. Their previous record was set the day before at 10,100 cases. Washington, D.C. is one of the only regions in the United States. There's actually two places in the U.S. where the COVID numbers are going down, Washington, D.C. and New Hampshire. Now, keep in mind, that's a little bit of a misnomer because they're going down less than they used to be. They used to be going down far greater. They used to be in the dark green, where they were seeing a 50% decrease in COVID cases. They have now moved up to the light green, and they will probably move to the yellow and then to the red. They are, what that is to say is, while they're still reporting fewer and fewer cases every day, those gains are getting wiped out. And I think it's reasonably, I hope they stay in the green. But I think it's a reasonable assumption that they're going to have a very difficult time staying that. But as of now, there are two states that are still in the green. One state and one district. We've had that discussion. New Hampshire is the sole remaining state to report a decrease in numbers, but that decrease has waned significantly. And Mexico has now closed its border with Arizona due to the cases. Harris County, which in Texas, which includes Houston, has now issued a ban on gatherings of 10 people or more. That ban was accepted for the 4th of July. It's also accepting religious and some recreational activities. The list of exceptions that I've seen seems to exceed the... it's like the hearsay law. We'll get Nate to discuss hearsay, and there are more exceptions to hearsay than there are actual ways that you get hearsay is going to get blocked. At any rate, there are more exceptions to the to this ban then, but at least it's a start. In Starr County, patients are now being flown to other nearby counties. Hospitals in Starr and not Harris, but there's one other. Sorry, I've lost the name of. In two counties, Starr and one other are flying patients to nearby counties, and Harris is quickly reaching capacity. In Georgia, where cases have increased by more than 50% over the last week, more than 1,400 healthcare workers have signed a letter begging the governor to increase the restrictions, dramatically increase the restrictions across the state. Over 1/3 of the population of San Quentin prison in California have now tested positive, and 3 death row inmates in San Quentin have died of coronavirus. The United States is in its third straight day of more than 50,000 new cases, with 130,000 deaths since this began. Dr. Anthony Fauci has testified last week that he believes that based on our current course, we can expect to see 100,000 or more new cases every day. That's 1 million new cases every week and a half. The following states, as of this moment, have now declared that all citizens must wear masks when going out in public. This includes California, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Illinois, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Texas, Virginia, and the state of Washington. Now, there's been something that I personally find rather shocking, and this was not queued up yet, so you'll please excuse me. One of the things that happened, I believe this was in Kansas, when the governor ordered that citizens needed to wear masks in public, a local newspaper came out, and I'm going to try to get the name of the newspaper again. I apologize, I'm a little behind here. Let me see if I can get both the name of the newspaper and the cartoon. They are on my phone, the dangers of, there it is. All right, I've got it. The Anderson County Review published a cartoon on the requirement by the governor that all citizens wear masks in public. We're going to show that cartoon here. They have put it on their Facebook page, and they've said it will be on their next issue of their magazine, of their newspaper. This is that cartoon. Laura, the governor, is referenced in this. It says, Lockdown Laura says, put on your masks and step into the cattle car. That is a cattle car that is loading Jews bound for the gas chambers. And the implication here is that requiring Kansas citizens to wear masks is tantamount to gassing millions of people to death. That's stunning. And we've all known that there is a disconnect between the cultures of the North and South, but to suggest that wearing masks as a public safety requirement has anything to do with the Holocaust is so offensive to every living human being that I can think of. Obviously, I can't speak for Jewish people, but I have to believe it's offensive to them. It's offensive to me as someone who thinks that people should be wearing masks and who think that we're trying to save lives. I don't even know where to begin. So that is the cartoon that is expected to be published, I believe, on Monday. And it's already out on the Anderson County Review Facebook page. All right, and what I'm going to do now is, sorry, I've been away from the live chat for just a minute because I had to get that cartoon wasn't quite queued up, but it was worth bringing up. And again, we are talking at this point 1 million new cases every 10 days. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at the numbers we're looking at. Texas is on the verge of being overwhelmed. They're at capacity. So is Florida. And the governor says you have to wear a mask, and that's what they say. No real words. And yeah, they did put the Star of David on that mask, which I thought was a part of me. I have to say, honestly, And then Arizona, as I guess just thank you, Zandering, has said that Arizona, I don't know if they were in the list I gave. No, Arizona was not on the list I gave. Um, this show was supposed to go on last night, so I'm a little, I uh, apologize, a little late. So, yeah, I think when people start getting sick, everyone's going to change their mind, presumably. But, and again, I apologize. I'm just going to quickly catch up with. Oh, I was asked when was the border closed. The border was closed Saturday, I think early in the morning. They closed. Arizona closed the border. In particular, the Arizona town where that border goes through. I think they are making some exceptions, but there's no tourism. There's no. Not, it's pretty serious when Mexico is closing the border. They're enforcing the borders as opposed to the um, yeah, and then the U.S. is essentially banned from most of Europe. We took a look at those numbers, and I'd like to show these numbers again. As you can see, the rest of the world is beginning to manage this. A lot of people are following Italy's example. Italy begged every other country to learn from their mistakes, and not everybody's learned as well as they could have. There are European countries that haven't learned as well as they could have, but they're doing reasonably well. We've not. And the entire world is watching these numbers, which we're doing, quote, for freedom. It's a false dichotomy. It's a false choice. We don't have to choose freedom or staying alive. Uh, you know, there's still freedom in the UK. Canada is still free. Japan is still free. France is still free. So is Spain. They're all still free. They're just chillaxing for a little while so that they don't kill themselves. At any rate, um, the United States has secured the entire world stock of the COVID-19 treatment remdesivir. This will deny any other country that needs to purchase that drug the ability to do so or to obtain it in any legal way for at least 3 months. It's a cornerstone of medical treatment that you treat people based on need, not on their ability to pay. Even in the United States, where you do pay for most treatments, if you can't afford ER, they will still treat you. If you have broken bones and you show up in the ER, if you've been shot and you showed up in the ER, they are not permitted to ask if you have insurance or can pay for your care. They fix it. The United States has purchased all of the remdesivir, not only that which has already been made, but enough to go into production through August. For 3 months, nobody else in the world will be able to get that drug. It was until recently the only drug that was shown to have any sign of any efficacy in saving lives against COVID-19. And we've purchased all of it. Now, admittedly, we do seem to have a bit of a higher need than most, but it's selfish to not take care of our own people, not take care of ourselves, not do even the most basic precautions to stay alive, and then take all the drug that we need to make up for the fact that we haven't been doing that and save our own lives when we're the ones taking all the risks that are driving up those numbers. That's on us. And now other countries aren't going to be able to save the lives of their citizens who have been doing the best they can and sacrificing their freedom to try to stay alive. It's a once in a lifetime thing. I remember 9/11 as if it happened yesterday. Anyone who was alive then remembers it. It still wasn't, it shocked the world. I remember paper, the headlines in France said, "Today we are all Americans." And it did bring the whole world closer together that this could happen to us. And in sympathy and empathy for our world being shattered by a terrorist attack. But none of us have lived through something that has brought every human being alive into this common brotherhood where we are all struggling to save ourselves and save our families. And yes, save our economy. That's worth saving. I don't want to sit there and ignore and pretend like, oh, gee, let's just drop the economy for everything. We need an economy. And people who say it's not worth a human life, of course it's worth a human life. We make that determination all the time. There's risk in life. But to look at those numbers and say that, gee, we can't do anything about it because the economy is going to get tanked no matter what we do. And we're going to be able to keep our freedoms, in part because everybody's got a gun. And then Sandring and I are going to have that discussion on Tuesday. But it gets frustrating. My apologies. As somebody who spends his days trying to educate people, it gets frustrating. At any rate, we have done that, as we did, in fact. We have purchased all of the COVID-19 treatment remdesivir that is available. We have contacted the manufacturer because it is a trademarked drug. Nobody else, or not trademarked, it's not copyrighted. I've forgotten what they call it. Somebody will remind me. But it's patented. The patent is still held by a single company. In the U.S., that's held, I believe, for 11 years. Because of that, nobody else can manufacture it. Doesn't matter that it's life-saving. Now, this brings back thoughts to the days when polio vaccine was invented, and the man who invented it, who could have become probably the richest man alive. And somebody in the live chat, please do let me know. I've forgotten, or somebody Google it. I've unfortunately forgotten the name of the man who invented the polio vaccine. But he could have become the richest man alive. He had this vaccine to something that we don't even think about. But in my father's time, 3 members of the football team at my father's high school were taken out by this. One died. One was on a ventilator for the rest of his life. The other one paralyzed. This was hitting. There was no. Polio was killing, well, not killing, but affecting more Americans so far than COVID has. Polio was huge. Jonas Salk, thank you. What did he do? He didn't put a patent on it so that anybody could make it anywhere in the world for free. It's one reason I get a little triggered when people talk about drug companies only being in it for the money. In some cases, that's absolutely true. But these conspiracy theories and these ideas that they're withholding things, in some cases, I mean, remdesivir really should be made available for free. The company's not doing it. Okay. But scientists, individual scientists who work in the labs, who make these drugs, do it to save lives. I have never met somebody who became a scientist because they wanted to become rich, ever. I met people who went onto Wall Street because they wanted to become rich, but people who said, I want to be a billionaire. I think I'm going to become a biologist. The good news is there is now a second drug which appears like it may have more efficacy than the first. Actually, just before I quickly hit that. So the U.S. has bought all the remdesivir. This is now the third time that we have poached the rest of the world in regards to this. We also started buying up all of the world supply of hydroxychloroquine. This is a toxic drug that most of the evidence at the time showed would probably kill you if you took it on COVID-19 because you'd already be compromised. It's a very dangerous drug. It's used in the treatment of malaria. And if you're dying of malaria, it's worthwhile. But otherwise, it's pretty toxic stuff. Trump got it in his head off a debunked study that said, hey, wow, this drug is going to save lots of lives because COVID-19 is actually 80% like malaria. You know what percentage we are like monkeys or bananas, for crying out loud? All right, Fine. Trump bought it, decided that this was going to be the drug. We bought all the hydroxychloroquine, and people who needed it for the treatment of malaria, especially in the UK, could not get it because we had a drug that later turned out tripled your chance of dying. If you take hydroxychloroquine to cure you while you're on COVID-19, the chances are it will kill the disease because it will kill you. Nonetheless, we have a huge stockpile of it, which we're going to keep. Who knows why? But aside from denying people that medicine, we also did the same thing with the French company Sanofi, which is still working on a vaccine to COVID-19. We have purchased exclusive rights to use that vaccine, and nobody else, no other country will have access to it if they complete it. Let's see, I apologize here. Give me 1 second. There is now another drug, dexamethasone, which has shown some significant efficacy in combating COVID-19. It is a corticosteroid. It appears to have efficacy in one way that remdesivir does not. Remdesivir really only works if you take it early. If you take it when somebody's really, really sick, it loses efficacy quickly. That is not the case with dexamethasone. Dexamethasone. Dexamethasone is effective even when you're at the point of being nearly dead and or on a ventilator, and appears to, at a minimum, have cut deaths by 1/3 in patients that were critically ill. So what's more, it's cheap, it's readily available, it is not on patent anymore, so any country can make any amount they want to. So we will keep up with what happens with that. The US has interestingly kind of shown its true colors in using its extraordinary wealth to corner the market on life-saving meds that the entire world needs, and then it turns out are useless to the US anyway. Last but not least, Donald Trump gave a speech yesterday in which he said, we are getting, quote, close to fighting our way out of the pandemic. That's the kind of language, I have no idea what that means. We haven't been fighting the pandemic till now. We're only close to starting the fight. We're close to fighting our way out, as in we're about to get out of it. No scientist on the planet thinks we're... Do you see those numbers? That's close to getting out of it? This country was doing better, he said, than any country has ever done in history. Not just us, but by any country. He then continued and speaking in front of Mount Rushmore, said that there was a, quote, growing danger to this country. The danger he spoke of was not the global pandemic. He was referring to a threat on America's heritage and from a nefarious left-wing threat with the sole goal of, quote, ending America. He said that they were engaged in, quote, a merciless campaign to wipe out our history, defame our heroes, and indoctrinate our children. He said that there is a new far-left fascism which demands absolute allegiance, and that, quote, if you don't speak their language, perform their rituals, recite its mantras, and follow its commandments, then you will be censored, banished, blacklisted, persecuted, and punished. It's not going to happen to us. Make no mistake, this left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. We will expose this dangerous movement, protect our nation's children, and against this radical assault, and preserve our beloved American way of life. That is the U.S. President declaring that anybody who is on the left is a growing danger to this country, who is set on the sole goal of, quote, ending America, and that he intends to, overthrowing the American Revolution, and that he will protect our children and this radical assault and preserve our way of life. Now, people have been taking down statues for quite some time. That happens. Culture changes. And when we no longer approve of certain things, we are not trying to whitewash it. we're trying to sit there and say we shouldn't idolize it. We shouldn't put it on a pedestal anymore because we've grown as a nation and in our culture, and we realize may not. The man, the man 200 years ago in the United States who educates his slaves, feeds them well, who makes sure that their medical needs are attended to and that they sleep in a warm, sheltered place. That man 200 years ago is a saint. A saint 200 years ago. That same man today is a monster. Things change. Change is not something to be afraid of, but one way or another, the only one that I've seen who shouts down his enemies and who tells people that they can't speak and won't engage in honest conversation is Trump. And not for nothing, but he has said that before this COVID-19, we were the greatest country in the world. We had done better than any other country ever has in history. Not just us, but any country. Well, if that's true, I would imagine we'd still be there. This pandemic has hit everybody. We have shown we don't care about our fellow Americans enough to put on a mask because freedom. I mean, if freedom doesn't mean that you don't have to put a cloth over you, what else? It's the same thing as taking Jews and putting them to the gas chamber. I mean, you saw the cartoon. That's insane. That's unhinged from reality. Like I said, Canada is still free. They're not seeing these numbers. Almost every other country, there are, 40, quote, free countries. They're all still free. It's unfortunate when you're so terrified of new ideas, of things that you don't understand and can't control, that you decide a word, freedom, is more important than the lives of your friends, family, neighbors, and just strangers who happen to be good people, who have families too, who are dying. It's not freedom, it's a symbol. You don't want to wear the mask because you want to symbolize the fact that you can do anything you want, even if it's completely stupid and endangers the lives of everybody else. That's somebody who's in fear. That's somebody who needs to not have the mask on so that they can demonstrate that they're free. I don't have to prove I'm free to anybody because I am, and I know it. So I can wear the mask. I don't have to prove I'm a big macho man like Trump. Trump still won't wear the mask. And people ask him, they say, why aren't you wearing the mask? Oh, well, I wear it while I'm in close contact. Fuck that. You're the president. Why don't you wear it now and show people what true leadership is? He's not interested in true leadership. He's interested in what people think. He's terrified of what people think of him. Barack Obama, when he did his first day, when he was elected, people were taking effigies of him and burning them, hanging them from trees, lynching effigies of him. You do one cartoon of Cheeto Boy in anything in the slightest unflattering light, and he crumbles. No president has ever had to put up with anything like this. Talk to Obama. He's a clown. And I don't mind clown buffoonery. Heck, let's elect Kanye West. Could hardly do worse job. And would probably, at least Kanye would actually probably listen to people. But to elect someone so fragile as this president, we want to take down statues of people. Christopher Columbus, in his own journal, wrote about raping Native Americans, wrote about how stupid they were because they would pick up a sword by the wrong end and cut off their fingers, wrote about how when he wasn't sure whether his blades were sharp or not, he would take some of their flesh and with the sword cut off their sides. He wrote about how if they weren't collecting enough gold for him, he would cut off their hands. That's Christopher Columbus, who, by the way, didn't discover America. If he had discovered America, pro tip, would be called Columbia. The person who correctly identified this continent and had mapped it before Columbus's third trip, which was the first time he ever set foot on either North or South America, was Amerigo Vespucci. That's why we're called America. This myth and legend of Christopher Columbus is hogwash. It was invented by a writer who liked to think of himself as a nonfiction writer, but he was a fiction writer. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote an entire mythology about Christopher Columbus, who was a brutal human being, stole the bounty for actually seeing land first, and ended up in prison for all his crimes, had all his titles, everything he had ever earned, stripped from him, and died refusing to even admit or acknowledge that he had found the New World. Those are facts, by his own hand. And somebody objects to the fact we want to take that statue down. According to Bartholomew de las Caracas, who was a minister who was there to keep an eye on him on his, I think it was his third trip, because he had murdered so many people brutally. And the Queen of Spain was just like, you need to stop killing people. And he refused. He's like, no, I like killing people. I'm not kidding. That's what happened. So he wanted the money. He wanted the gold, of which there was none. So Indians would throw themselves and their children off of cliffs rather than face him. Now we know this reality because we have his own words, we have his writing, we have the writings of other people, and modern history has been able to determine that. And like the slave owner who 200 years ago was a saint for feeding those slaves and for sheltering them and for giving them good health care and letting them have time off, he's now a monster because he had slaves in the first place. That's okay. History changes. It's okay to take down the statue of Columbus. It's okay to take down most of these things. You don't have to be afraid, Donnie. I'm going to go hit the live chat a little bit more, and then I'm going to wish everyone a happy weekend. We are going to keep an eye on the rhetoric coming out of Donald Trump was really quite staggering. I think it's, yeah, let's... he wants a war with the left. I don't think he minds if it becomes violent. I think we spoke with Ethan a bit about that, Prolib, who's the co-host on Overtime, and he had some interesting arguments. And I think it is true that I think Trump doesn't mind violence. I think he does, as long as he's not involved, his bone spurs. But I think he doesn't mind actually when there's violence in the streets to some extent, as long as he is the one who gets to quell it, as long as he is the big. He likes to be seen as a big, powerful guy and as the big boss man who's going to come in and protect everybody. And I think if he can start a war with the left, that's great. We are already more divided than we've ever been at any time since the Civil War. And he seems dead set on stoking that, purely political reasons. And he takes the moniker of being the most inclusive and what is it? Sorry, I'm a little tired. The opposite of a divider, a uniter. He's the great uniter. No president has ever really united everyone, but again, Obama did a far better job. Obama wasn't running around insulting the other side like this. He wasn't instigating like this. He may not like the fact that he socialized medicine, despite the fact it's going to happen someday. It will happen someday, whether you like it or not, because it's the only thing that's going to work. But nonetheless, I'm done ranting. I apologize. All right, so I don't think freedoms. Yeah. I do apologize. I've been neglecting the side chat, but thank you all for showing up. Thank you all for your comments. Yeah, I will confess, the goal of rhetoric like this actually is It's to do two things. It's to galvanize your base against the left, and it's to piss off the base so that they attack. It's a pitch in the dirt. It does sometimes work on me. I can't. There are times when I sit there and say, "Okay, fine, if you really want to play it that way," but then somebody has to be the grown up in the room. Somebody has to be the grown up in the room, and it ain't going to be Cheeto Boy. Yeah, we've purchased the rights to the COVID vaccine. That vaccine isn't done, and it looks like there's going to be some other vaccines. So I think all the stuff that we've purchased, most of it's going to be useless anyway. It is what it is. So we are going to. All right, I'm going to quickly. What I'm going to do before I bail, I'm going to quickly hit the Discord. We do have a Discord. We've got a news section there where we try to just keep up all the breaking news, anything that's going on. If there's like real serious breaking news that I have to get into. Oh, right. So, thank you, Tony. Mr. Tony Designs has notified me that it appears there is growing evidence, according to the Houston Chronicle. Evidence is growing that Houston's main coronavirus strain is more contagious than original. So we're going to go look into that. If so, that may make it the third significant COVID strain. It's always difficult to say when there's a new strain. When is there a new race of human beings? When it happens over, you get mixes, you get everybody's different. Everybody's different. These are artificial categories where we sort of say at some point we have a new strain. Every version of coronavirus, every time it duplicates, it's slightly different than the previous. At what point do you say you have a new strain? There are some actual reasonable answers that biologists use, but there's argument. But for now, what I'm going to say is there is commonly accepted two current coronavirus strains. Most people have thought that this that we're seeing is the first. Actually, it turns out it's probably the second. The first is a lot less virulent and a lot less contagious, but is still out there. And the question is, which one do we get immunities against if we can only choose? If a vaccine only works on one, which one do you do, and which one have they been? Because if they start testing for and attempting to vaccinate against the first, and it's not the biggest one, it's just the one that they happen to pick up. Turns out it looks like they are vaccinating against the second, and it looks like vaccines hopefully will be effective against both. If there's now a third, I don't see whether this is a third, or this would have to be a third, because currently what is considered the main strain is in fact the second strain. Two new research papers show that this new strain is more transmissible than the first. So this is one of the things we spoke about with Dr. Sygart, who I think we'll probably have to invite on to discuss this kind of thing again. But all the numbers that we have are assuming that this stays roughly the same, and viruses do mutate. There has been, and we're staying on this as well, there is a new swine flu that appears to be quite serious. Human beings have now infected it. It's in China. They have gotten it from swine. However, we haven't mentioned it. The only reason we haven't mentioned it really till now is because we don't know what the transmission rates are, and this happens all the time. We're a little oversensitive to this kind of thing right now, so it's like, oh my God, there's a new swine flu in China that's actually just jumped to human beings. There is, but that happens several times a year easily, probably even more than that. I don't know what the numbers are. If I had to guess off the top of my head, 3 to 5 times a year, there's some kind of virus that's contagious, that's dangerous, that jumps from an animal to somewhere in it happens. In this case with COVID, it jumped, I think if I recall, from bats to humans, and it was bad. We've had swine flu and avian flus that jump from birds and pigs to humans, and it doesn't end up going very far. That's what happens 9 times out of 10. So there's one that just made the jump in China. Did it, I think, last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. We're keeping an eye on it. At any rate, the COVID numbers all assume that this doesn't become more contagious. And that's an assumption, and it's not a safe assumption, because in general, that is what tends to happen, especially when you start treating it. Remember, you have to think of it as a thinking, living organism. It's not, but it reacts that way. You are engaged in combat with it. And when you find a treatment for it, if you don't act quickly, it can adapt. The use of antibiotics in bacterial infections, this is a viral one, but in bacterial infections, you use antibiotics. If you don't eliminate it, it comes back, and it comes back stronger because it's adapted to the medicines you're using. So the process of adaptation, if we don't act rapidly enough and properly, we come back with a stronger virus. And I guess there's some indication now that the Houston strain may be that. We don't know. We've seen now, they say, 2 papers that suggest that the new strain is more transmissible. We will keep on that. Thank you, Tony, for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate it. That's on our Discord. On our Discord, we have a news section where stuff like that is being dropped, and it's usually the easiest way to get my attention if there's something you want to talk about. But I'm in there. Probably I'll try to stop by maybe after the show for a little bit. But we're always doing hangouts there. We're also, if you want to do become a patron, we're going to have a Patreon hangout tomorrow. And patrons, we get a lot of our show ideas from our patrons. We talk about where the show's headed, what's going on. There's exclusive content for patrons, also behind-the-scenes stuff. We're going to start streaming a lot of the behind-the-scenes before shows are going to go straight into the Discord, and people can check it out and see what. So I hope you'll think about it and think about supporting the show. We we'll do more in the Discord. Tuesday is Andrew in Person. Andrew in Person is a very good friend of the show, a longtime supporter of the show. He's a great guy, and we've spoken some. I think we both we seem to cross at, but he was there for the original gun debate that Ansgar and I had, and I think he liked a lot of the points I made. I think he liked how I held the discussion, but he had his own counterpoints, and we have spoken some, and he's got good arguments. He's got very good arguments. It's some of the few arguments that I've really heard on the right that at a minimum I can understand and do make sense to me in one way or another. So we are going to have a discussion. It's not going to be a debate. It's going to be a discussion Tuesday on gun control in the United States. We have, I believe, on the 24th, I'll have to check that, and we'll get the calendar up, but we have the philosophy of religion with Osmandius and Dr. Richard Carrier, and we will be doing that in time as well. So I hope you guys will join us. Thank you very much for coming by. Please like and subscribe if you like the show. It really does help out. And thank you all for your contributions. A lot of people here today that we haven't seen in a while. I think the change in hours, but a lot of people here today who've also been really big contributors. And I thank you, everyone who works very, very hard on this show. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the Discord and talking with you all later. Oh, and then this is